Hi cuties, we're at the desk today. The blue lights are on. That means we're doing something on the computer here. So we are going to talk about editing because this is 2021 and for me, that is the year of editing. I have 2 books that are going to need some severe editing that I'm hoping to publish one this year and query the other. So I wanted to talk a bit about my editing process because it's a little bit, I don't know if it's different than other people, but it's definitely extraneous now because I have made mistakes in the past and I've learned from said mistakes. I would like to impart some advice to all the aspiring authors out there that don't know how to edit their work, don't know what to do about it, hopefully prevent you from publishing a first draft. Please don't ever publish a first draft or a second draft or a third, probably, just to be on the safe side. Also, don't let your friends be the only people who see your work because they might not be honest with you when your stories aren't the greatest or need more developing because they don't want to hurt your feelings. So, and if you do have friends that are a bit more professional about it, then sure, use them. But a lot of the times people will not give you a full honest answer if they know you personally. So this is where you need to seek elsewhere. Anyway, aside from those things, let's talk about the actual editing process and not just the ideas of editing. Because sometimes you go into these videos and people only talk about the overall concepts of it without actually getting down to the nitty-gritty, and I'm getting down to the nitty-gritty. These are my tactics. This is what I do. So we're going to take a look today at my new book, Humane Society for Creatures and Cryptids, because that's one that I'm doing one of these stages of editing on right now, which is my developmental edits. This is how I do mine. This is not set in stone of how everyone should do theirs. These are just my tactics. And these are tactics that I have developed over the years from mistakes that I've made in the past, and I'm trying to not do those in the future. Okay? You're allowed to make mistakes as long as you learn from them, people. So, anyway, developmental edits. I actually start at the end of my book first. So I'm gonna go in because as my stories, you may plot your book, and if you're like me, good luck with that plot because the characters don't always do what you think they're going to do, and your plots get shifted. Certain things come up while you're writing through the end because I do write pretty linearly. It's just my style, so if you have a different style of writing, this may not work for you. But for me, this is what works. So I have written this book in 3 parts or 3 acts, and I'm going to start with Act 3. So I also have this notebook here that has my key because I highlight things so that I can come back to them later, because right now in developmental edits, I am looking for stuff that I need to remember when I go back to the beginning. And then we'll do more other stuff later. More other stuff later. Yes. I'm a writer. So I have notes here as we go along. So anything, like you can see on the screen now, anything highlighted in pink means I need to add more. I need to add more there as we move along. These are just quick. So red is possible striking. I haven't decided on if I'm going to strike it or not or get rid of it. A green is a word choice. So I'm like, but I didn't want to spend time on it right now because these are quicker. These developmental edits, I am just looking for quick boom, 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 boom things. So I'm like, boom, I'm going to fix that later. My turquoises mean I need to reword this sentence. I don't like how this sentence is worded. So like this one says, she knew she should feel the same way, but her stupid heart was betraying her mind. I just don't like that sentence. So I want to change it. And you'll see as we go further deeper in, I was running a rough starting here. Like Melpomene has a lot of those. There's a bunch of Melpomene's POV in this chapter that I'm like, I hate how this is phrased. I hate how this is phrased. And I want to change that. I'm going to think on it later. All I need to know right now is I don't like that, highlight it, ponder it at a later point. And those are my main things that I'm looking for in this act. So that was my first round of developmental edits. You'll see them as we go. There'll be more kind of hit there. The other thing that I'll be doing as I'm doing this, instead of just highlighting, because that looks like, oh, you didn't do much there, is I'm actually writing down notes in this notebook of things I need to like foreshadow, plot pieces I need to remind things, or character development notes that I need to make more prominent in the beginning of the story. So I have things like, okay, I need more backstory for this other character who started smaller and now turns out a little bit bigger. Or I need to add more about this piece of the main character, more foreshadowing to this Doomsday part of this. And that's where I'm writing them in a notebook here. I'm not going to write that all over this. This is just my quick, like, okay, do this quick, ew, gross sentence, gross word choice, ew, kill this, or add more here, whatever, blah, 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 blah. Or like basic things I need to make sure that I'm like, hey, make sure you're always spelling this correctly. Make sure you're always calling this one thing, because like sometimes the names have changed. So the house that they all live in had a name change, and I need to make sure that the name is all the same. Also notes for like, oh, hey, possible book 2 notes, because this was supposed to be a standalone. It might not be anymore, but it's not to the point where it has to be a full series where it's thought out way yonder in advance. I have a different theory of how I want this to go, not necessarily a traditional series, more like companion novels and things that I can kind of connect within them. So I'm thinking I could do a companion novel to this. Anyway, that's a different story. We're here to talk about editing. So those are my tactics for developmental editing. So when I do that, I go through Act 3 and then I go through Act 2 and I do the same thing. And then I can go into Act 1 and I can start adding those notes in. And that's how developmental editing works for me. Okay? This is not how other people do their developmental edits. This is how I do mine. Okay? Breathe. It's okay. It may seem like a lot of work, but it helps me in the end. So once I go through those developmental edits, then we go all the way to the beginning. The beginning. Here we are at the beginning. So let's say I've done all my developmental edits. I have now gone through all those highlighted points. That's happening as I'm going through the run through of it. After I've done Act 3, Act 2, back to Act 1, then I work back to Act 2 and Act 3, working my way back through the manuscript. Now it should be good there. Now we have to do the super duper tedious one. And this is something I actually learned in high school from one of my favorite teacher ever, Mr. Reed. If you're out there, Mr. Reed, I didn't forget this, but I did stop doing this for a while, and this is where I'm like, I should have listened to Mr. Reed for like my first book where I didn't do this, and I regret not doing this because this is how typos happen. It's also how bad sentence fluency happens. So let's say we're reading chapter 1, small mountain town, Talia. We're reading Talia's stuff. So, granted, you're looking at a draft right now that has not had this done yet, so bear with me. I'm going to read it like this. There are 2 types of people in Pandora. Those who will never leave, and those who want nothing more than to get the hell out. Talia Lambros was the latter. She already had everything planned. Once she finished her senior year at Pandora High, she would take her car and drive straight out towards Telluride until she was out of Colorado entirely. Do you see what I'm doing? So you're going to read that with a very flat, robotic tone. And if it reads well as a robotic tone, then it's fine. You just read and glaze over it, because as an author, you're already used to what this should say. Your mind will put words in there. If you have missing words, your mind will just go ahead and throw it in there for you before you realize it's not there. Or it'll correct words that are wrong, because your mind already knows what it should be. This is why you need fresh eyes on it, or you need to let it sit for a long time after you've written your drafts. So instead of just going, there are 2 types of people in Pandora, those who will never leave and those who want nothing more than to get the hell out. Talia Lambros was the latter. She already had everything planned. Once she finished, because you already know how you want the tone to be read. You need to see if a robot can read it and it still makes sense. So this is what Mr. Reed called static reading. I don't know if that's the actual term for it, but that's what he called it. And he had us do this with our essays. So a little bit different, but it works for a narrative as well. So if you do this, it'll help you catch words that are wrong, missing, spelled wrong, obviously. You'll be able to see those. He recommends having it printed out and doing it with your finger and reading it out like that. I'm just doing it with my cursor right now. I do normally print my whole manuscript. I'll print it double-spaced and I'll red pen it, but for the sake of this video, we have not done that. Also, I am out of printer ink. So that is static editing. That is the second way that I edit. After I have static edited, then I'm gonna do it all again. Not static editing, but I'm gonna go through it all again and just see how the story still makes me feel, kind of line edit a little bit. Granted, I now have an editor who's gonna help me a lot with this, but for all of Ashport and stuff, I did not have an editor. It was me, and it was Hala and other friends that were helping me, and I greatly appreciate their help and stuff, but I don't want to put pressure on them to do that, because these are my books, and I should be responsible for them, especially for self-publishing, and I couldn't afford to pay them for that, and I felt very bad. But now I have an editor that I am going to be paying, so check out my Ko-fi page and help me out, because I'm broke. I'm a retail person here. My day job does not pay well. I'm just gonna go through again, read it all, and see if there's any other things that I may have missed, because again, your eyes get used to these things very, very quickly. And then you start sending it off to your alphas and your betas. I'm gonna have alphas for this I've actually technically already had an alpha, or some alphas go through the first chapter and see that. I actually haven't checked if anybody else has filled out the survey. I think one person's done it, but you know, whatever. If you guys want to see the first chapter of this, I have it out for alphas, but just as a little like, hey, what do you guys think of this so far? It's not edited at all, but what do you think? That's what I've done with it. So there you go. So you do your alphas and your betas. So people are always wondering what is the difference, A, and when do you send your stuff out? You really should, I'm going to go to the second question first. You should never send out your work to alphas and betas before it's edited. Don't do that. Unless you're like me and you're like, hey, here's a sample. I just want this, and you have specific questions. Alphas and betas are not editors. They should not be asked to edit. It should not be expected of them to edit. If they offer to make little notes here and there for you on like a typo, sure, that's up to them. However, you as an author cannot ask that of them. That is not their job. They are there to be, they're not pretend readers. They're your first reader group. They're gonna be your test audience. So that's what they are. They're not a test editor for you. They're not an unpaid editing service. Don't treat them like that. It's rude. The difference, I would say, between alphas and betas. Alphas are your first round. I would say your alphas are your more trusted readers who are going to have more input developmentally. These should be people who are more familiar with your work. Obviously, if you've never done anything before, I would just keep them as a more trusted group. These are after you've done, again, after you've finished all of your edits, and this is your test group to see if they follow. And they're going to give you your first round of notes. And then your betas are then your second round. So after you've taken the notes from your alphas, then you go into betas. And betas are your kind of your final point where this is kind of like your last chance before you publish. If you're going the self-publishing route, that's your last moment before you get into formatting and stuff. That's another video. Those are my main strategies for editing my books. Hope you guys like that. If you have any questions about editing, again, you can obviously see I'm just using Word. I don't really use any fancy software. I do have Scrivener. I don't use it for much. I just like Word. Don't come for me. I think Word is easy to use. When formatting time comes, then we're going to use something else. So stay tuned. I don't know, maybe we'll do a whole thing about this, but that's how I do editing. There are your tips and tricks for how you can do your own edits. Let me know if you have any other editing strategies, because I can always learn more. definitely something I can always use help with, and I appreciate learning more strategies. Maybe you have an easier way of the way I do mine, but again, trust in Mr. Reed. Mr. Reed knows what he was talking about in my 11th grade English class. He was awesome though. I miss his class. Like if I had to time travel and put myself back in my teen years, god awful teen years, I would probably put myself in my junior year so that I could be in Mr. Reed's class. That's what I would do. That's it. There you guys go. That's my video today. Hope you enjoyed it. Let me know what your editing strategies are. If any of these make sense to you and work out for you, then you can use them and all that jazz. And leave your comments down below on Facebook, Tumblr, and Twitter. And check out my Ko-fi page. Help me pay my editor. Please help me pay my editor. Editors are not cheap, and I don't get paid much from my own work. And yes, please help me. Please God help me. All right, I'll see you next time, cuties. Bye. Ooh, I'm yawning. I'm very tired.